Hello everybody, and my, do we have an enormous jackpot to unpack. These are a lot of cars. Oh boy, let's shoot straight from the hip. Alright, let's first start off with the Action Racing Collectibles diecast that I have to show. This is Terry Labonte's Iron Man scheme, which I believe was his 600th start that he drove in 1998. Was it, was it Darlington? No, that was the silver paint scheme in 1996. This one's different. I don't exactly remember what paint scheme which track he drove this in, but nonetheless, it is a pretty badass car. Next, we've got Sterling Marlin's Kodak scheme from 1997. I technically already had this car, but my uncle decided to send it to me from LA. I mean, I already had this car, but thank you, Dan. Cool. Very much appreciated. Hope you've been doing well in LA, by the way, if you just so happen to come across this video. Next is Steve Park's standard Pennzoil scheme. I technically already had the Pennzoil schemes, but this is a completely different Monte Carlo that we're talking about right here. And of course, this paint scheme kind of gives me traumatizing flashbacks over the fact that he got terribly injured at Atlanta in, I think it was 98. He seemed to have had a bright future with DEI because the man himself, Dale Earnhardt, decided to call Steve Park up and give him a top-tier equipped car, and it seemed like Steve Park was having a bright future, and of course, it's just terrible luck kept striking him. His terrible crash at Atlanta in 98, and of course, the strangest accident at Darlington, the Busch Series, in 2001, where his rear axle broke and then some other car hit him. I don't remember who it was that hit him, but he was driving the 31 car at Darlington, and while he was under caution, his rear axle just completely broke and then got hit terribly. Next is the Rush Center truck driven by Tony Stewart from 2013. I mean, Tony Stewart is a Hall of Famer and and a legend, and 2013 is one of my favorite years as a Jimmy Johnson fan, of course, considering I did see him win the championship in person, and of course I see no harm in collecting all the diecasts from Jimmy Johnson's saga to win championship number 6, or just any championship at all. Next is Clint Bowyer's paint scheme that he drove at Martinsville in 2015, which he wrecked and finished last with at Martinsville. Like the fact that he finished last, whereas Jeff Gordon won his last race, that said race. I really don't feel like laughing, and nor really shit talking too much about Clint Bowyer, but as a Jeff Gordon fan, traumatized by all the bullshit Clint pulled upon him, I kind of had to feel the need to laugh at him. So, next is, for the sake of collecting all the throwbacks in the year that Jimmy Johnson won his 7th championship, I decided to buy Danica Patrick's throwback Nature's Bakery scheme that she drove at Darlington. Yeah, she wasn't a good driver in the Cup Series, but history's history. Next is Matt Kenseth's Blue Diff scheme. Beautiful paint scheme. I may or may not have seen this race in person, or may have saw many cars similar to it, but nonetheless, I could just go through my photo albums and see whether or not he drove this car. I'm pretty sure he drove something similar to it. I do remember seeing his Tide Pods car at Phoenix, and I'm sure all the millennials and other deranged buffoons were flipping out when they saw that their snack car slam across the wall. Sorry, Matt Kenseth, if I'm dissing on you. I still think you're a legend, buddy. And on the list, it's still a pretty good car. Next is Eric Almirola's throwback to, I think, Richard Petty's 200th win at Daytona. This was the paint scheme Richard Petty ran at the, I think it was called the Pepsi 400, Firecracker 400, whatever it's called, I don't know. And this was exactly the paint scheme that Richard Petty drove, so Eric Almirola in 2017 decided to throw it back to that particular day. Really good paint scheme. I tried to find the 2016 throwback that Eric Almirola drove, which was a throwback to Richard Petty, but it was too expensive, like $30, which I thought was stupid, so. Next is a patriotic scheme by Dale Earnhardt Jr. I know Dale Earnhardt Jr. did not even come close to having one of the best seasons in 2017, but you gotta give it to the guy. He really went through a lot of pure hell in regards to his concussions, and he still had he may have underperformed compared to his dad, but he's still a Hall of Famer nonetheless. He still had a decent amount of wins under his belt. 26 is still a pretty big number for NASCAR standards. Next is Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s standard scheme of 2017. And I decided, why not? I mean, I did see it race in person. Next, I know a lot of people are not going to like this, but Kyle Busch's 2019 scheme. It's pretty much the same thing as the 2017 scheme, what I was looking for, which I did see race in person, but I decided, why not? I do have his 2014 scheme of this, but this is with the different headlights, keep in mind. Alright, Chris Buescher's standard scheme. Since I saw this in person, I decided, why not? In person at Loudon, if I'm not mistaken. And of course, John Hunter Nemechek's sick guard car. Same principle with Chris Busch's scheme, but considering that John Hunter Nemechek has been running pretty decently well in this underfunded team, I think he would do just fine if he was given a chance at a top-tier team. Next is, of course, Alex Bowman's ChevyGoods.com scheme that I saw at Loudon. It's a pretty cool car. It kind of gives me the Dale Earnhardt vibes in a way, even though I know those schemes look nothing alike, but the white number and the black body, it kind of does give me the Dale Earnhardt vibes. Really, really badass looking car. Next is Unifirst by Chase Elliott, which I saw at Phoenix, which he should have won the race at until the whole missing lug nut ordeal fucking killed me. But hey, at least they're switching to the single lug nut in Gen 7, so I wouldn't have to deal with that absurd, colossal bullshit anymore. And good God, did that bullshit ordeal give me PTSD as a Jimmy Johnson fan back in the 2012 finale when his crew had the rarest fuck-up ever. But hey, I'm not going to dwell on it since Jimmy Johnson's already tied with the two legends before him, so it doesn't really matter to me anymore. Not like it mattered right after Jimmy Johnson, when I saw Jimmy Johnson win his 6th championship in person at Homestead in 2013, which I've mentioned multiple times at this point. Next, for the Winston Cup cars, mostly Winston Cup cars, one's an XL, Kevin Harvick's Now Sell Tires scheme that he drove in 2002. Pretty damn awesome scheme that would look good on my wall. Next is Steve Park's paint scheme that he drove at 1999, which is one of the first, I think that was the very first NASCAR race that NBC broadcasted when Alan Bestwick was in the booth with Benny Parsons. And then NBC switched to full-time in 2001, signing a $4.6, $4.7, $4.8 billion a year. I don't know what the exact number was. Tony Stewart won the race at Homestead, I believe. Next is Jeff Gordon's Snoopy car that he drove at the Brickyard in 2000. I think this is one of many cartoon cars that Jeff Gordon would drive in the Winston Cup days, which we are going to definitely get to in this video later in regards to cartoon schemes. Next is Ryan Newman's All-Tell scheme from 2003, which he won plenty of races in, as well as the Mobile One and Sony scheme. Like, good gravy. That was like one of the only season where Ryan Newman had a somewhat championship-worthy season, even though he was still inconsistent compared to Matt Kenseth. With all those crashes, that Ryan Newman had 8 race wins. For today's standards, it's kind of hard to believe Ryan Newman had a season quite like that. What the hell happened to Ryan Newman? Next is Mark Martin's Viagra scheme. Hate to say it, but 2003 was not even close to one of the better seasons for Mark Martin, as the whole 16 was complete and utter dumpster fire that season, as he would find himself in the wall ever so constantly. I'm sure that would give Kamikaze Games terrible flashbacks, as well as my buddy Mark Riggleman. Which is a shame, because this Viagra scheme does look pretty hot. Next is Kevin Harvick's Sugar Ray scheme that he drove at Richmond in 2003, where he had that big rivalry with Ricky Rudd when he had, I think he turned Ricky Rudd, I think Harvick was turned into the wall by Ricky Rudd, and then they took their rivalry down on pit road post-race. I was watching that race at my cousin's house. Good God, my mom, dad, uncle, aunt, we're all going crazy watching that insane racing, about, especially when they all were wrecking in the back straightaway. They all were, good God, they were reacting as if they were looking at a tornado or something. I especially felt bad for Elliott Sadler that night when he was stuck in the infield grass in the front straightaway. Next is Robert Presley's paint scheme from the year 2000. I did have this paint scheme once before, but I don't know where it is, and I think it got too loved. But hey, nonetheless, it's back in my collection, and I decided to put it on my wall. I think it'll look good on my wall. Next is Bobby Labonte's Interstate Batteries paint scheme. That will also, once again, look good on my wall. I remember him trying to wheel it in on Jamie McMurray the night. This paint scheme gives me memories of when Jamie McMurray won his first race at Charlotte in 2002, and then called up Sterling Marlin, the driver he was placing, on the phone. And then post-race, Tony Stewart decided to ambush the shit out of Bobby Labonte, screaming, "Congrats, teammate!" What a sportsmanship. What sportsmanship Tony Stewart has right there, ladies and gentlemen. Next is Tony Stewart's Kids Workshop scheme that I think did he drive this paint scheme at Homestead, Miami? I believe he did. I think he might have won it too, so if I'm not mistaken, he did win with this paint scheme at Homestead, Miami. So I'm sure someone, an enormous NASCAR encyclopedia would correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but I do very much believe and remember seeing him race this paint scheme at Homestead, Miami in the year 2000. Casey Atwood finished in the top 10 that race too. And then from there on out for Casey Atwood, it was just pure misery. Next is the paint scheme that Dave Matthews paint scheme that Dale Earnhardt Jr. drove at Fontana in 2004. Unfortunately, he did wreck with that scheme and then finished it off when he had that crash with Ken Schrader, but it was still a cool scheme nonetheless. I remember how upset my dad was when he saw Dale Earnhardt Jr. wreck it, because it was such a cool scheme. Next is the Victory Lap by Jeff Gordon. don't completely remember which race he drove this in, but all I remember is that every past Winston Cup champion was doing at least every Winston Cup champion still active on the track was scheduled for at least one race with with their standard paint scheme, but with the silver body on top, with the silver hood, silver roof, and silver deck lid. Rusty Wallace did it, Jeff Gordon did it, Tony Stewart did it, Bobby Labonte did it, Terry Labonte did it, etc., etc. And as you can see right there, NASCAR Winston Cup Series champion, 95, 97, 98, 2001. Add 3 more years to that by real points, and he's a 7-time champion. I don't care what anyone else says, because he's still, in my book, in everyone else's Rational Minds book, a 7-time champion. I don't care what anyone else says, he's still a 7-time champion, as I've preached ad nauseum. Next, as it says right on here, this was unfortunately the final race before 9/11 unfolded. But here's Jeff Gordon's Looney Tunes paint scheme that he drove at Richmond, which I believe Ricky Rudd won that race when he put the bumper to Kevin Harvick right after Kevin Harvick did the exact same thing to him a few laps prior. That, my friends, were the days of better racing, where people were putting the bumper to each other constantly, and where it was almost every race, and it was still unpredictable who would win with roughly even 5 laps to go on those tracks. Luckily, the short track racing in NASCAR is still decent. It's just, because of how terrible 2018 to now have been, even tracks like Richmond have not lived up to expectations for quite some time. But Richmond will always have a legacy of fun, decent racing, as I will always, as the 2012 race will always have a special place in my heart, since Jeff Gordon made the chase by 1 point that year, and of course, the 2004 race where Dale Earnhardt Jr. won. Jimmy Johnson finished second that race after spinning out, too. Next is the Kevin Harvick's 2002 Looney Tunes scheme. This time it's the same race, but the following year. Matt Kenseth won that race, I believe, and the points leader at the time, Sterling Marlin, wrecked out and finished 43rd. And then a few races later, Sterling Marlin would break his neck at Kansas to finish off his season in heartbreak. I always loved rewatching those old races from time to time, because it reminded me when NASCAR was consistent. Next is the Big E's paint scheme that he won with in the 1998 Daytona 500. That was my first race, and I remember my dad telling me that me wiggling, I think it was my left leg, was my sign language telling him to turn back the channel, because that's my way of telling him that I liked watching that television. So he would flip back to the NASCAR on CBS channel, and that just so happened to be the race, and Dale Earnhardt won it. He was showing off his stereo surrounding speakers in his room, and his friend John, with his daughter Kate, came over briefly to see what it was like, and then Dale Earnhardt just so happened to be the first winner that I saw on TV. Huh. What an entry to NASCAR, am I right, ladies and gentlemen? The first race I watched on TV, Dale Earnhardt finally broke through and won the Daytona 500 after 20 years of trying, 20 years of frustration. Next is Rusty Wallace's flame scheme that he drove in 2002. My memory is a little bit hazy on what race he ran this at, but it is still a pretty badass scheme to add to your collection. Even with the logo Rusty on it, but still. I mean, Rusty Wallace is also a legend, so why not? Next is the Hooters scheme from 2002 to 2003 from Brett Bodine. It's a pretty cool scheme. I think Greg Biffle paid tribute to this scheme in 2016 as well. Really cool scheme. I know it didn't really have much history behind it beyond Hooters doesn't really have much of a legacy in NASCAR beyond Alan Kulwicki's championship in 1992, but it still had pretty cool schemes. And of course, here's Bobby Hamilton's senior's scheme from 2002. Considering I was on a diecast hunt to find cars to buy from Jimmy Johnson's first 2 Winston Cup seasons, I decided, why not? So I decided to search up Bobby Hamilton as one of the drivers that I just so happen to not have one of those cars in my collection. So next is 2 of Ward Burton's kick-ass cat schemes. His truck engine scheme and his cat rental scheme. I think he drove this one at the Brickyard 400, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I think that might be just Scott Wimmer I'm thinking of running that same scheme the following year. Next, on the cartoon schemes, technically this is Greg Biffle since he was filling in for Bobby Hamilton that Richmond race since Bobby Hamilton, I don't know why he was absent, but all I know is that he was going to originally drive this car until Greg Biffle started filling in for him. And then Greg Biffle would run full-time in Roush the following season, despite missing 1 race at Atlanta. Next is Terry Labonte's Looney Tunes scheme that he drove at that same Richmond race, since they were doing that Looney Tunes program said race. Unfortunately, he wrecked with this paint scheme, so it technically was kind of ruined. But it's still a pretty badass scheme to have in your collection nonetheless, not to mention that Terry Labonte is a Hendrick legend nonetheless. His stats may pale in comparison to Jeff Gordon, but he's still a lovable Hall of Famer. Next, we go back to Terry Labonte once again. The Cheez-Its car. Another Hendrick scheme with flames on it, too. It looks kind of similar to Jeff Gordon's scheme, except the flames are all the way almost on the back rather than the front. Who doesn't love Cheez-Its, am I right? And then, of course, another Looney Tunes scheme that ran at the same Richmond race in 2002. I think that's the last of the Looney Tunes schemes from 2002 that I have in my collection now. Robbie Gordon. Hard to believe I saw 1 out of his 3 race wins in his Cup career. Next, I kind of thought I didn't have this paint scheme. I bought it because I did see this paint scheme in person in 2019, and it's essentially the same paint scheme as the 2019 one, and as it turns out, I already have it in my collection under here. So, duh me. So, Hoover, if you don't already have that Sirius Satellite scheme, congratulations, I'm going to give it to you. Next is Dale Earnhardt's Goodwrench Service Plus scheme that he drove throughout the majority of 1999 season, and that scheme is pretty much infamous for him turning Terry Labonte around at the Bristol night race, and then oh my god, with 100,000+ fans booing the shit out of him. Who's trying to release Gage? I wasn't trying to reckon. Dale Earnhardt with his mixed emotions and some in his classic controversy, am I right? I mean, Dale Earnhardt was still a bit of a rogue punk on the track, but at least he was hilarious when he was doing it, and at least he was mature for the most part, when even if he was driving like a punk. Kyle Busch, on the other hand, is always saying stupid shit like, if you don't like what I'm doing, don't even watch. Fuck off. Dale Earnhardt had more class than you, you dumb piece of shit. I was just trying to get back. He bumped me out of the way, so I decided to get back at him. I wasn't trying to wreck him. Classic Dale Earnhardt. Classic Dale Earnhardt. And then, what do you know? Jeremy Mayfield in that classic Mobile 1 scheme bumped him out of the way at Pocono in 2000, and then used Dale Earnhardt's words against him by saying, I was just trying to rattle his cage. Talk about getting a taste of your own medicine, Dale Earnhardt. And then you went on to tell him he's number one that race. Indeed, Jeremy Mayfield was number one. Sorry for my little witty talk against Dale Earnhardt. And last but not least, one of my few original favorite drivers that I even used to have a jacket of, Ricky Rudd in his Ironman scheme when he had 656 consecutive starts until it was broken at 2015 at New Hampshire when Jeff Gordon made 789 starts. Consecutive starts, I meant. It's a pretty damn cool scheme. Alright, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this little update of mine. Sorry that it was super fucking long. But hey, I'm a super fan of NASCAR. Can you really blame me? Thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for more. And if you like my content or like my videos, thumbs up and subscribe. And maybe we'll have routine conversations here and there whenever I upload videos or do whatever the fuck it is that I'm doing. Follow me on my other sites that I go on, whether it be Twitter, Instagram, yada yada yada. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a nice night.